Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Power Man podcast. My name's Rory Paquette, and I know you know that. I just love reminding myself and you folks how grateful I am to be sitting in this chair doing what I'm doing. You folks have come through for me time after time after time. I love the feedback. I love the shares. I love the subscribes. Love all of the DMs you folks have been sending. It's been absolutely amazing. And I am going to respond to every single DM. Don't worry. I keep in mind I respond to them personally. So you're not getting an assistant or anything. So give me a little bit of grace. But when I do respond, it's not going to be like, a thumbs up emoji. I'll give you an actual answer to what you're talking about. So, folks, I believe me, I'll get to all of you. But thank you so much for raising us up, and we appreciate you. If you're a friend of the program, you know what time it is. That's right, it's time to pay a couple bills. So let's take a sip of my preferred beverage. Man, that's good stuff. Oh my goodness. And you know what we're drinking? That's right. It's Freedom Hill Coffee at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Look us up, check us out. Folks, they do all the right things for all the right reasons. They support veterans, which is one of the biggest reasons why we support them. Folks, their coffee is deep, dark, rich, bold, and beautiful, just like my wife. It's absolutely a fantastic cup of Joe. And for all you veterans that are out there, we love you. Thank you and your families for your service. Yeah, glad you found a home here with Power Man. We have a huge veteran contingency that listens to this program, and I value each and every one of you folks. Folks, go check them out. Freedom Hill Coffee at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Tell them Power Man sent you. Now, let me get one more sip of this before I introduce this young buck sitting across the table from me. All right, here we go. Please welcome to the show. He's a counselor. He's a chaplain. He's a consultant. Please welcome Felice Mathieu. Felice, how you doing, brother?
Hello, hello. Blessings. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad you're on. We've been trying to connect a little bit, and I know I had like an internet issue and had
Right.
to, it was just like disappeared on me last time I was going to have you on the show. But I really appreciate you rescheduling, coming back on, and coming on here to kind of deliver your message and talk about these topics. And we have several things to talk about. But before we get into that, you've got one heck of a story, man. I know you do. And why don't you go ahead and tell everybody who is Felice Mathieu, what makes you you, and what's brought you here today?
Yeah, no worries. Technical difficulties happen. I'm grateful to be here and love what you're doing. I believe in your vision. You obviously have the skills and experience to do it. And good coffee, you know. Yeah, that coffee. I don't even drink coffee, but you made me want to, hey, what's this coffee about? And I am a veteran, so that's
Oh my
very
goodness, man!
catchy there. I like that.
Thank you
So
for your service,
yeah,
brother. I did
Felice
not know
Matthew.
that about you.
Oh yeah, yeah. I served in the Navy.
All
Yeah.
right,
Well,
love that,
thank
man.
you. So yeah, Felice, anything that you can Google about Felice Matthew now, if you know the story that I'm about to tell you, it makes sense because it's just an extension of my story. The short version is I'm an orphan kid that, didn't grow up with God, that was just trying to figure out his place in the world because by age 13, I had no blood relatives, and I was like that until I had my 3-year-old son after about, a 12-year marriage. I dropped out of high school. I got my GED, served in the military, became a Christian, became a father, and realized that my calling in this life, what God desired for me, was to be a teacher in the form of a therapist, a chaplain, and a consultant. So that's the short story. The longer story is, my mother died of HIV when I was 12, so I'd be in school learning about the symptoms of HIV. And for the year leading up to my mother's death, I'd come home and see these symptoms. So that tore me apart. And I
Wow.
remember wrestling with God during that time because I know what was going to happen. I could do nothing to stop it. And my mother was one of two blood relatives that I ever knew. The second blood relative that I knew was my granduncle, and my granduncle died less than 6 or 7 months after my mother died. Now people will ask, "Well, where was your father?" Hey, your guess is as good as mine. I never even seen his picture. I never knew what I looked like. And here's an interesting fact that I'm sharing with the world for the very first time. You get an exclusive, Mr. Rory.
Uh-oh.
Exclusive. And I really mean that. Just a few days ago, my wife's persistence has found an uncle and an aunt of mine. And so right now I'm going through stories of my mother and stories of all that. But up until this point, I had no contact with any type of blood relatives. I only knew
Wow.
my 3-year-old son. So literally the last few days, my wife has found some through her investigation as a CIA analyst or something. No, I'm joking, y'all. She don't work for CIA, but she is very persistent. I had already gotten to the point. I mean, I'm 41. I've already gotten to the point where it's
Wow.
like, okay, I've accepted that I have anybody, but bam, uncle, aunt on my mother's side. So we're going through that ordeal and unpacking stories, sharing stuff. But I grew up like that. I grew up a kid that no matter what room he went into, I was the only one that had nobody. No brother, no sister, no mother, no father, no uncle, no cousin, no grandmother, no grandfather. It tore me up inside. As a counselor, I'm a family and marriage therapist. As a counselor, I understand now your sense of identity, the first layer of paint, so to speak, on your identity comes from your immediate family or
Yeah.
whoever your caregivers are. So when that's absent, now you're left with a child that has no sense of who he is. So in a way, I was trying different identities on from other people, trying to figure out who I was. It tore me up growing up. It really tore me up growing up. So the therapy, the therapist, the chaplain, the consultant, all has to do with relationships. They're just different ways that I serve relationships. And the reason I became like this is because I became obsessed. The
Yeah.
way trauma works in us, trauma meaning anything that has lasting effects on us mentally, emotionally, spiritually, that we carry to every relationship, right? So if you grew up poor, then you'll have a lot of trauma around money and security and people that are going to be there for you. So I grew up without a family. My trauma revolved around two things. I could have had two polar opposites. I could have became one person that was I had a hard problem forming relationships. But I've been married 15 years, so I think I've mastered the art of war a little bit, right? So,
Yeah.
or I could have became obsessed with relationships. Well, I became the kid who had a Nintendo controller in right hand and Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus in the left hand, a book. Right. Some of you listeners might know that book. It's a little
I remember
ancient.
it.
Okay. It's a little ancient, but just to give you some insight, if you know the book The Five Love Languages in modern times,
Yeah.
which was huge, is
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
Great. I recommend it to everybody. But before the five love languages was Men from Mars and Women Are from Venus. That was the Titan back in the day. And I remember being a 13, 14-year-old kid reading that book, not because I was trying to be anything that I wasn't, just I was obsessed with that world. Like you take any craft or hobby that you listeners you have right now and you
Yeah.
think about the compounded time and practice and everything and where you are and using that gifting or that talent, that was relationships is that for me. That was my video game. That was what basketball is to Michael Jordan. I look at the nuances, I read the books, I watch the movies. If you ask my wife at any given point in our marriage what she loves about me the most, she'll say, and she has said, it's just my obsession and my commitment to relationships. It's just an extension of who I am. That's what I feel like my purpose is in this world. And I didn't know that until I went to grad school. And I didn't even know I should go to grad school. I was teaching relationship concepts as a spoken word poet. That was the vehicle that I was
Mm.
using at that time. But, you know, so many people started hearing my content. I started getting the following. I started doing really well in Orlando, Florida. And then my church mentor, he told me, "You ever thought about being a counselor?" I said, "Counselor? No counselor. What are you? And you're the spiritual leader of this group? Counselor. Look, I'm a poet that just talks about relationship things between men and women and marriage and family structure. And that's it. But counselor, that's a stretch, sir. But to end the rant, that's me. I'm a guy obsessed with relationships. I'm a guy that God has given a certain insight, and He's put people around me to develop that, and I've trained that formally and academically, and now there's so many lessons that I have to share with people that I believe will address the number one problem in our relationships, which is poor communication. It's by
Interesting.
far the number one thing I think has destroyed a lot of different relationships. So that's what I mostly focus on now with my wife's tremendous support.
Nice. Let me ask you about the relatives you just found. They didn't know about you either?
No, no, well, let me rephrase that. They knew of me. They didn't know if I was still alive because
Oh,
we got to
wow.
put ourselves, I take this idea from how you study the Bible, right? You got to study it in the context of what it was. Haiti is where my relatives are, right? Or were. I
Okay.
think now some of them are in Bahamas but Haiti, it's not exactly, you know, the most financially successful place. And then think
Sure.
about technology, right? We don't, I mean, we can just pick up a phone right now, but in Haiti, it's not exactly like that. And then electricity is not something that's just there on like the sunrise, so add that, over a 30, 40 year span, you had earthquakes. Remember the big earthquake in Haiti
Oh yeah.
decades ago?
Yeah.
You had two, three hurricanes. Now you have a gang that's running the country. So these are all
Wow.
um, great obstacles, when it comes to searching for a potential family member, because at that point you're just trying to survive the next day.
Right. Well, it's amazing that you found him. That's fantastic. That's a great
Praise
story.
my wife. My wife is awesome.
All by itself. So, how long you been married?
15 years.
15 years, man. Congratulations. I mean, in today's world,
Thank you.
that's a huge accomplishment. That's
7
gigantic.
years is the divorce rate. Average these days is 7 years. So we
Uh,
doubled that. Praise God.
Good for you, man. That's fantastic. You and I have been on. Let's shift over a little to some of the topics we were talking about here. You and I have been on a show before with our friend Youssef.
Yes,
It
sir.
was talking about men's issues, things like that.
Great
And I
show.
know from talking to you and from hearing you before that talking about community for men has always been a huge issue for you.
Hmm.
Um, but hearing your story, I completely understand why. Now, I didn't know any of this about you, and I just thought
Right.
that this was something you really believed. Now I understand why you believe it. So,
Oh yeah.
obviously your upbringing has a whole lot to do on your current beliefs for men. And, maybe you want to speak to that a little bit about how important, community is to men and then some of the issues that, men are dealing with, today.
Absolutely. Like if you are married, we are called to love our wives like who loved the church? Jesus. Oh, no pressure. It's just a perfect being that, walked the earth. Can you
Right.
imagine being like Michael Jordan's son and trying to follow in his footsteps? You're like,
No,
I mean, like
no.
that type of pressure. But yeah, here we got a perfect being, right? God in the flesh, and we're called to love our wives. And we're called to love people, period. But men specifically, husbands specifically, are called to love their wives as Jesus loved the church. That's tremendous pressure if you're trying to walk in that light. And I would pray that you are, because I am. I pick up my cross daily, and I try to aim for that. I miss it often. My wife would tell you, I miss it often, but I aim for it. I aim for it. I believe in it, and I think there's a lot of residual benefits from trying to live like that. Now, who do we have to turn to? Because think about what society says. Men aren't supposed to cry. Stop being a girl. Be a man. Or, all these things that we're programmed with. So now we kind of develop a callous around our hearts and our minds and our suffering. And we just told to work, provide, be this, be that. Work, provide, be this, be that. And a lot of our value from people, sometimes the closest people towards us, is based on and is centered on and is focused on what we can do. Not who we are,
Right. Yeah.
what we can do. And then generally what happens is that we don't talk about it. We just kind of keep it in, and we march on.
Yeah.
And that is by far one of the worst things we can do for mental health. Worst things. Case in point, here's a story. Everybody remembers 9/11,
Oh
right?
yeah.
That tragic, tragic day. Now, of course, we got to honor and respect and think about the lives that were lost. Absolutely. And at the same time, what about the lives that were living that had to deal with the loss? So they brought in one guy. Can you believe that? Here goes 9/11, catastrophic. They brought in one guy, Dr. Vanderkolk. He wrote a book called The Body Keeps the Score, right? The body keeps the score when it talks about trauma and pain and how your body kind of holds on to that. And every relationship you have, your body's going to be presented in that relationship. So hence the trauma that you didn't deal with is going to be in that relationship. You know
Yeah.
what he suggested? Here's the leading trauma expert in the world. You know what he suggested as far as getting past our traumas, whether it's rape, abandonment, death, murder, kidnapping, it does not matter. He said, talk about it. Wait a minute. This is the leading expert in the world, and you're telling me to talk about it? Yes, that's what
Oh,
he's saying
that's
in his
cutting
book, The
edge.
Body
Wow.
Keep the Score.
That is cutting
Right?
edge stuff right there.
Oh man, I'm trying to tell you above his time, right? So they did plenty of experiments on it. The mental health world, the clinical world doesn't even laugh at stuff like that because it's just accepted as fact right now. A lot of the modalities and systems to approaches to therapy,
Yeah.
just regardless of the population, regardless of the race or the culture, is talking about it. Why? Because they didn't experiment. They tied machines to brains and hearts and all that stuff. And they realized when someone had trauma and they were talking about it, here's the magnificence of the Lord. Brains were actually healing each other. Brains were healing each other and themselves from
Hmm.
the talking about it because you get it off your chest. And that statement goes deeper than you can ever know. You ever been so
Wow.
mad at someone and you held it in? Now we're just talking about one emotion, anger, mad. You hold it in, you want to, and then when you finally get it out, man, I don't know why I was so mad, man. That was kind of stupid. I should have kind of, dang, it was all he did was drink my drink. I could have bought another one. I mean, what's really, you know? So that's just one emotion.
Yeah.
Imagine all the other emotions and how it affects you, and how imagine how it feels to release it. So, the biggest advice that I can give to men is one, find a community, and two, talk. Of course, you can't trust everybody, but
Right.
eventually you find people that you can trust from going through people you can't trust. Eventually, you find someone, and there needs to be a constant communication and just support there. And that community looks differently. Me, I'm a gamer. I don't really go out much. I'm a pretty boring guy. If it wasn't for my wife, I mean, I provide. I spend time with my son. I eat good food. I watch movies and shows over that I love. I don't really go out in there. There's nothing really out in there in the world for me. I mean, I grew up orphan. We had a little bit of money, and we all shared a car. So I've been there, done that, traveled here, had these experiences. I mean, by high school, I had no adult supervision. Like, so, and it was just
Yeah.
high schoolers in a house. So I mean, I could stay home all day, every day, and not be bored. I got my games, got my food, got my wife, got my son. So my community is video games.
Yeah.
Somebody's community may be basketball. Another person's community is, it's just the point is you find a community of men where you can kind of talk to
Mhm.
and get support to. And one of the biggest quotes that I grew up believing in, even before I really knew the Bible, was the wise seeks the multitude of counsel. So everything that I am is a combination of experiences and questions that I ask people and wisdom that I listen to. That's really what a lot of these things that people pay attention to me for is a combination of a lot of people that God put in my life. And I listened
Yeah.
and I listened and I just share that. So community is important, man. It really, really, really is.
I'm glad I love hearing it from you. I love the way you phrase it and, kind of the way you encapsulate it, about why it's so important. And now that we've heard your story too, we know where that's coming from, which is really important. But as
Amen.
far as men go, the community of men, gives us that opportunity to kind of let
Hmm.
the walls down a little bit, maybe trust your brother a little, because there's so much pressure on us to not let any of that out when we're, at home. We're trying to lead by example. There's the old saying, my wife and my kids would much rather see me die on my horse than fall off of it. They don't want to see you fail. They don't want to see you overwhelmed. You know what I mean? It's just it's those things. When we start talking about men and the pressure they're under, men who are aspiring to live, Christ-like lives and, live according to, a code, a moral code, according to the way the Bible lays it out, that's even more pressure, because there seems to be like, almost no forgiveness for us not doing what we're doing when
Absolutely.
we're doing it, but
Oh,
maybe,
yeah.
maybe you can speak to that because the pressure that we're under so often comes from our own standards we're putting on ourselves. And if we don't have that community, then we end up lashing out, when
Hmm.
we don't hit those.
Preach. Absolutely. Now, the pressure, the pressure. I mean, I could answer that directly, but I want to answer that in a more well-rounded way. But to answer it directly, really quickly, we get this pressure because of unrealistic standards from ourselves and from people, right? I
Right.
mean, we can put it in those two categories. It can branch out from there, but Unrealistic expectations of ourselves and from people. Okay,
Yep.
cool. Now let's talk about the people part because that's the part where that kind of reinforces the community that I'm talking about. Why is it, generally speaking, and I don't say this to gender bash or anything like that. I mean, I'm a therapist. I see both men and women.
Okay.
I've been, before I was a therapist, I was an online coach, about 10 years online. I've went into homes. I've spoken at workshops and set a few seminars. So I've seen both spectrums, both men and women, right? A lot of the times, the pressures that men feel from other people, let's say women, whether it's wives or mothers or daughters or just women that we knew, the reason we feel that pressure is because men don't talk much to each other. Women have a community of that stuff. Women are the one that are going to these concerts with these R&B singers and romantic singers. Women are the one who are reading these books on relationships. Women are the ones that are going to these movies about what we call chick flicks. Women are the ones that are gathering to in a location and talking about men, and they're doing that. So now what is it, what ends up happening as a result of that? It seems like the problem is always the man, right? Because they get
Oh yeah.
together not to hold each other accountable, generally speaking. And women, I know there's some of you that do, but never in a time. I've been looking at this scene since I was 13. I've never seen a sign. I've never seen a time as right now where so many men are tired and they're saying, "Hey, it's great to talk about bad leaders, good, because it holds us accountable." Yes, but when are we going to talk about bad followers? Right? When are we going to talk about the women and this and that? So never a time in history I've seen so many men who are tired and saying, "What about y'all? What about y'all?"
Right.
I Now when I say this, I got to really be careful because someone will be like, "Oh, you're just gender bashing." Well, okay, look, I can't address everybody's thoughts. Everybody ain't like Jesus, so
Yeah.
like I get it. What I will say is this: I believe that we all fall short of the glory of God. And if I interpret that text correctly through exegesis, that all includes both genders. So,
Fair. Very fair.
right. So now
Yeah.
what happens a lot of the times is that we talk about men, but we don't talk about women. So, men, I'm not saying bash women. I'm not saying hate women. I love my wife. I told my wife if she leave me for another man, I guess me, you, and your man sleeping in the house together because I'm gonna be sleeping on the couch. That's just what's gonna happen. To death do us part. That's what I signed up for. I guess your man just gonna have to deal with the extra. So it's not about that. I love my wife. My mom died when I was 12. I dedicated a poem to her. November 28, 1996 is when she died. Every Thanksgiving is weird for me because I love to eat and I love my wife's turkey. But at the same time, I'm thinking about my mom. So I'll be eating good food and be like, "Oh, mama, this is good turkey." So it's conflicted emotions. So it's
Yeah.
not bashing. It's not bashing. It's not bashing women. I'm just saying that all fall short of the glory of God. And men, the takeaway from this is that the community gives you an opportunity to vent and to seek wisdom from men who have went through that
Yeah.
from women in their lives and what they've done to get that extra lap or get further in that marathon through wisdom. Of course, they got it wrong because we all fall short, but here's some of the things that they got right. And that's always the perspective, the transparent perspective that I come through. Not to say that, "Oh, yeah, we're just good." Look, we argued yesterday morning. You know what I'm saying? It's not about the
Right.
perfection, it's about the progression and the direction. So I think a lot of the pressure comes from the unrealistic expectations we set of ourselves. So the community can kind of manage that for you, right? Because you'll have an older man who's been married and say, "Yeah, I used to think that as a husband when I was younger, and here's what I realized," right? Yeah. Or even if it's not
Yeah.
talking about the spouse roles, it could be business. Yeah, I spent a lot of money trying to do that, but here's what actually led to my breakthrough. All these things is what you find in the community of men, right? And the second point to kind of summarize that is that the reason why we face so much pressures, unrealistic expectations from the women is that we don't hold them accountable.
Yeah.
We don't hold them accountable.
Right.
Why? Because we're called to love like Jesus loved the church. So we think that's just love and giving and support. Yeah, Jesus also held people accountable. I think that's kind of like a core thing there.
Yeah. That's true.
It's like a core thing because if he didn't, then I mean, what would we do with sin and imperfections? Did he just come to say, hey, do a good job, give you a hug, give a couple of lessons, like kumbaya, all right, see you next time? No, that's not how it worked. He came to address specific problems in ourselves.
Yeah,
And the sins that we have in ourselves that he came to address manifest itself in a lot of ways in our relationships. Lying, pride, disrespect. These are the results of sin. And those things need to be held accountable. And if we don't hold them accountable, that's where the pressures come.
for
I,
sure.
and I'm still working on summarizing, y'all. I'm more of an explainer.
You're
So
doing great,
hopefully
brother.
that makes sense.
Yeah, you're doing great. And I love the points that you brought up just now too, because as long I'll say it. I mean, hey, I've had three death threats in this program, and nothing's going to surprise me
Whoa.
anymore. So,
Wow. I got to hear
if I
about
get
that
some hate,
sometime.
it's just a Wednesday. If I get some hate, no big deal.
Oh,
So,
wow.
folks, go ahead and send it. I don't care. But the fact of the matter is you brought up accountability, and in our society, and even within our gender and our own gender expectations, as men, we expect that we are going to be held accountable
Mm-hmm.
in our entire lives. We're held
Mm-hmm.
accountable in our jobs. We're held accountable for our children, for showing up, for providing, for protecting. Anything goes wrong, it falls on us first.
Mm-hmm.
Um, by and large, women are not called to be held accountable very often, especially in the relationships.
Mm-hmm.
You brought up the Men Are from Mars, Women Are from Venus, that old book, that guys like you and I know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that book specifically calls for the making deposits into the emotional bank accounts and
Oh,
stuff,
yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, somebody has to make the deposit first. When you have a man and a woman and they're having an issue, someone has to lead. Someone has to say, "Hey, I'm going to make a deposit first and wait on my withdrawal." And if I do that, then maybe I, set us down the path because it's my job to lead in this, relationship. When you put all those things together, it's a very lonely place for men to be.
Yeah.
Having to
Yeah.
always be first, having to always endeavor to lead, having to always take accountability when very often no one else is. And then that leads you back to the group because if so many men are feeling that way and they can actually express that to one another without having to worry about making deposits for each other, they can just
Right.
come together and withdraw a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of peace, then that really does kind of speak to why community is so huge. But
Mm-hmm.
men have such a hard time then getting into communities.
Yeah.
I have a community that I've offered to hundreds of men. um, there's communities everywhere for men, but men are still so hesitant to join that community. Do you have any
Yeah.
thoughts maybe on why that is? As a, counselor, I would love to, and one who understands men's issues, I'd love to hear, why are we as men so reluctant to seek that out and say, hey, I need a safe spot for a minute, with men. It almost feels like we're doing something wrong when we're
Right.
in our men's group, doesn't it?
Right. Right. Yeah. I see it all the time. Recently I just had a session with someone from our private practice, and he's a very intelligent man. He's making very good money. He loves his wife, has several kids. He's an engineer. He's very emotionally intelligent, um, very perceptive on his flaws, but yet still has no community. Right. And here's the funny thing: he's in church ministry as a leader and
Mm.
still doesn't feel like he has a community. Now, how do I bridge the gap as a therapist to kind of share that with y'all? Well, several reasons. One is unresolved trauma. Because if you go into this person's life and the trauma is breeds from our story as a kid, wherever our stories as a kids forms trauma, because nobody's perfect, parents aren't perfect, people aren't perfect. They're going to do imperfect things, and that's going to leave a lasting impression neurologically. And
Mm.
then how we speak, how we react, how we are stems from these connections in our brains that were formed from trauma. So a lot of people say, "Oh, just get past your past." You can't. Like scientifically, any interaction is stored. And if it's reoccurring interaction, it's like muscle memory at that point. So now you don't think about it, you do, but you're not aware of it. And now that becomes how you speak and how you act. So the trauma, a lot of trauma. So like here's a specific one. If I was a person, a man that grew up and had a lot of people do wrong to him that were men, Do you think I'm going to be easy to trust a community of
Mm,
men? Right? Because I haven't dealt with
mm,
that lack of trust. I
mm.
haven't dealt with it. I've moved past it. I've buried it and thought that I dealt with it. But look, you could bury a ticking bomb. That doesn't mean that it's dealt with. Dealt with. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah,
there. It's there. So that's one reason we haven't dealt with our trauma, right? And why haven't we? Because we think it's a weakness as man. We got to be the man. What is this trauma counseling and therapy and talking about our feeling stuff? I got to be a man. I got to provide. I got to go out there and do A, B, C, D. And this is slowing me down. I'll get to it later.
right.
Maybe after this football game. You know, right? So that's one reason that makes us hesitant, especially
Yeah,
if you grew up in a tough neighborhood of just people that are not so good and you see them consistently. Like I did. I grew up in a small town called Immokalee, Florida. We had one high school, one middle school, and not a lot of opportunity for greatness unless you were academically great and it was an F school for a while, or you played sports. Outside of that, it's going to be things that are not so good that people are trying to do in that area. So if you grew up in that environment, it's even harder to trust, right?
right,
So that's one. The second thing is they don't really feel a need for it. They don't feel a need for it. All right. If I work out, oh, I get this nice body, fits my clothes. I can do this when it comes to sports or lifting stuff. Oh man, I need to work out.
right.
If I am someone with money, like I'm entrepreneur, I need money because I want to be able to pay debt off, provide for my family. Yeah, I need that. But community, and when you're growing up as a kid, wanting to play with your friends, you feel like you need that because you don't want to be bored and you want to stay in the house, right? But now,
Right.
as you're older, why do you need it? Why do you need a community? What are they gonna do for me? I'm 30, I'm 40, I don't got time for best friends. I'll have business partners, but why do you need it? No, look, kale is an amazing, amazing food for our bodies. I don't hear people bragging about kale. I hear people bragging about fried chicken, pizza, cookies, drinks. Kale is amazing. I put it in my smoothies every now and then. Kale is an
Yeah,
amazing thing for your body. But we don't always like our spiritual vegetables.
right.
We just don't. So I think those are the two biggest common denominators that I see with all the people that reach out to us from our social media or our blogs or people that I see in a private practice. The common denominator seems to be they don't feel like there's a real need for it,
Yeah.
right? And they haven't dealt with the trauma that's acting as a barrier to the community.
Hmm. Interesting. Because I mean, I'm one of the poster children for unresolved childhood trauma. And so
As we
I
are.
I never really connected those two things like that. That's interesting. I appreciate you, bringing that up in that perspective.
Great
Um,
question.
so, I guess part of that, then to follow up is how do we help men get past that? How do we help men so that they start looking for these groups that people like you and I know in our hearts that they need so badly? How do we help them find them?
Well, I mentioned the two barriers, right, or two common denominators. One of
Right?
them is pretty easy to deal with. The second one is a little bit more involved. The first one, when it comes to the need for it, that's pretty easy. That's pretty easy because let me take you back to when we were kids. How do we form our friendships with men when we were kids? You ever thought about that? I seen this
Hmm.
a reel recently, right? And it was very funny. It said, "This is how men make friends." And it showed a clip. First clip, hey, you about to play basketball? Yeah, I got next. All right, cool. You playing? All right, man. You gonna be out here tomorrow? All right, cool. Come out here tomorrow. Hey, what's up, man? Hey, man, you were balling yesterday, man. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Play
That's right.
basketball? All right, cool. And then after that, it's just like by the first month, you're like best friends. You're hanging out every day. You're playing basketball, playing all this other stuff. So what's the takeaway from that message? A common interest. What are you passionate about? I'm a gamer, man. That's look. One of my goals is to have a mentorship for young adults through gaming. Right now, the military has signed millions of dollars, and they're using video gaming as to address PTSD and a whole lot of mental problems. It's like it's a real thing in therapy.
Yeah.
Video games
Wow.
provides a community. Video games provides an escape from reality in the same way. Sorry for the reference, but it's true. A lot of people use drugs and alcohol to escape reality. That's
Sure.
the whole point of it, to escape the pain and seek pleasure. Well, they finding now through a lot of studies that video game provides community and a release from that part of the brain that's thinking about the trauma. So that's my community. Even before that, though, I was just always a gamer. I mean, I was just saying that to make me myself look cool at that point,
Right.
be accepted. But
Now it's
yeah,
acceptable. Yeah.
yeah, now it's acceptable. Yeah, yeah. But I just love gaming. It really provides. We're doing something fun together and ends up to other So that's just one aspect of it. But there's a lot of different ways where you can have a common interest and you form a friendship around that common interest, so it seems genuine. Everybody likes something. Everybody could be working 20-hour days and then it's time to go to sleep. But I just got to do this one thing a little bit today. Just
Right.
like so you form a community around that and let
Right.
that organically grow. That's not hard. We do that all the time. That's not hard at all. The second part is a little bit harder, getting past the trauma,
Yeah.
and it's only harder because one, we don't see the trauma that we have, so it takes someone who has the experience and the training to see it,
Mhm.
right? So now that takes trusting that person to see things in ourselves that we don't see, and then we may disagree with what they see. You don't know me, right? Like you know me for what? A few sessions. You're telling me about my whole life, and you tell me what I see. That's not true. So that is the hardest part as a counselor. That's the hardest part as a parent. That's the hardest part as a friend that sees something in someone else that they don't see. That's the hardest part because they're blind to it. They're blind to it. How many times have we been blind to something and years later, what the heck was I? I probably shouldn't have ate 3 Big Macs. Maybe I had to, what was I thinking? Was I that hungry? But when someone was telling you, hey, you want three, you don't tell me how hungry I am. You don't know my stomach. Like that's in the fabric of our being as a result of sin, right?
Right.
That ignorance, that blindness is a result of sin. That's my belief. Some people don't believe in Christianity or sin. They don't believe in the idea of sin or all. Well, then I ain't the right one for you because that's what I believe. Right?
Right.
That's what I believe. It's all a result of sin. That ignorance, that blindness. If we study scripture, we can see how many times sin has caused us to be blind. Many times. Apostle Paul was blind until God regenerated him. He was blind. He was killing Christians. He was persecuting Christians. But then all of a sudden, he's blind and said, maybe I shouldn't kill people, groups of people. Like
Yeah.
maybe.
There's a thought. Yeah.
Yes. I wonder why I didn't see this before. Exactly. Right. So that's the
Right.
hardest part is dealing with the unresolved trauma. And it takes having a trusted friend. Because essentially, if you take all, and there was an expert counselor that brought all, he has his doctorate degree, he brought all the counselors together, top in the world, and he really wanted to know how to be a good counselor, regardless of the field. And after years of research, all he said was a counselor is a trusted friend.
Interesting.
So trust his friend. So you're going to trust that friend to see things in you that you don't see in yourself and to help you out of that.
Right.
So that's why it's so hard because one, we don't trust anymore. We're in a society right now where,
Mm.
rightfully so, there's a lot of scams, a lot of bad people, a lot of wickedness. We
Right.
got to see the fruits of someone's tree before we can. And that's a whole paradigm that has to change, especially with churches. Churches, I love y'all. Y'all doing a great job, the good ones. But right now is really, really bad for the next generation. They don't trust churches. They don't want to go to churches, and the churches is not the new mission field. The new mission field is social media. Sorry, sorry, churches. They don't care
Oof.
about your churches and your programs and your pamphlets. The new mission field is social media. So they haven't got with those times. And every time someone like a therapist, a chaplain, anyone outside of the church wants to get in, they have this old paradigm of trust that I want to talk about one day. The old paradigm of, I'm going to see who you are first. 3, 4 years later, I'm going to give you this platform to do what God called you to do. Versus, hey, trust is just a choice, right? Whether you choose to trust someone 3 years or 10 years from now, the next day they can literally make that mistake. So, how about you find out who they are, trust in who they've shown you they are, and give them a platform to do what God has given them to do while you walk alongside them. That
Hmm.
way, the people they meant to serve is actually getting served while you're trying to learn to trust versus keeping them out, as if wolves can't be kept in the church too, versus trying to
Right.
keep people out. It's like it's a whole paradigm thing that I had to change, but the trust thing is really, really hard. And my biggest advice, I have been gifted that people trust me easily. That's just a gift. I don't have no science about it. It's just a gift. People just end up trusting me easily. Even I've I've known people from pimps to pastors, from gang members to God disciples. I've been able to fit into all of them. I haven't interacted in their activities, but I've just been me in all of them. I'm transparent with my flaws, and that's the biggest thing. If you're transparent about you being Clark Kent and not Superman all the time, people trust that. They resonate with that. They relate to that, and that's how you start the process. That's really how you start the process and trusting people.
That's another great perspective on that. As far as the paradigm of, the church and trusting in the next generation, this is a whole other conversation that I would love to get into with you.
Oh man,
And to be honest, we got to talk afterwards for a minute because I have
absolutely,
another podcast that I think you and I got to have a conversation on about
absolutely,
almost that exact same thing, and especially about the new mission field being social media. Holy cow.
absolutely.
But just to kind of wrap up our conversation here on the men's issues, part of this,
Mhm.
I love what you brought today, and I love the ideas that you have there. The one last thing I kind of wanted to ask you about was because you had pretty definitive stance on what is masculinity, what is an alpha man, in terms of what we should be aspiring to be as men, right? Because I mean everybody knows that there's the idea that, well, it's and you
Mhm.
grunt and you throw an axe and you kill a deer and that makes you a man, type of thing. But there's so much more to it, and men are kind of struggling with um, what's too much masculinity, what's not enough masculinity, where do we cross the line into being toxic, and where am I just
Oh
being
my God.
strong, right? I mean,
Oh
because
yeah.
we're persecuted so badly for every little
Oh
thing.
yeah. Hmm.
So what is a just a good standard to be aspiring to if you're trying to be that alpha male, if you're trying to be that leader, you want to stand up and be masculine, but you're not trying to, have that move over into like aggression.
Yeah, that's such a great point, and I'm glad that we ended with that one. That's huge. I see it all the time. Uh, like for one, what maybe 5 out of 8 couples that I see in a private practice, or 5 out of 8 couples that reach out through our social media, that's often the topic that women bring up in their men. Um, it's very challenging, and as you know now, I don't have the gift for summarization. I think you're going to help me with that as we continue to get. I'm an explainer, man. I'm an explainer, and especially with something like this, so I'll try to be as brief as I can. Um, okay, one, a strong Christian man is going to seem weak to the world. That's the
Mm,
paradigm shift that has to change. It's going to seem weak to the world, man, because
absolutely.
essentially we're called to be selfless servants.
Yeah.
That's going to seem weak for the world because alpha man, if you think about it, and I was caught being that the first few years of my marriage because I didn't know what a man to be. I never seen my father. I never really had fatherly figure, like so I didn't know. I thought I got to be confident I'm right and I don't doubt myself and this is what I said and fall in line, my wife and as the man says it, then I was that guy for the first year or two. I'm not proud to say it, but I was trying to figure out what my identity in Christ was as a man, right? And then I realized, with the late great Pastor John MacArthur, my favorite pastor, I realized from listening to his sermons and whatnot that a God fearing man, a Christian man, is gonna seem weak to the world, and you gotta get to a point where you're okay with that because Christianity involves paradigm shifts.
Yeah.
That's just how it works. If I have a body and I desire a different physical body, and I want to go to the gym, it's not just the activity that's going to get me there. It's the mindsets around health, nutrition, working out, everything that's going to get me there. So that's the point that I'm trying to make with men. First, you got to understand what the Bible teaches about a man, what a man is, not what the world does. What the Bible teaches about what a man is. And, you know, here's a spoiler alert, selfless servant. That's, selfless. It sucks. When you
Yeah.
get it wrong, we hear about the father or the husband or the brother or the man or the mentor. When we get it right, it's kind of like, well, that's what you're supposed to do. It
Yeah.
sucks.
Exactly.
It does not feel good at all. But you know what? I've taken my expectations off of people and I make decisions now with the perspective, and I mean this so much with the perspective of, you know what? I know God is happy with me. And there are times where I feel like favor and blessings and opportunity. And I personally, I don't have any confirmation of this. I don't hear audible words from the Lord. I read my Bible. Sorry, people, but I read my Bible. So I feel certain times where doors open easier, favor, relationships, random moments, and I feel like it's because I'm walking in the way that God wants me to walk. So that is how I kind of deal with the lack of praise and the lack of expectations, or people thinking because I'm quiet and reserved that I'm weak. Like they just don't know me. I'm Haitian. Y'all don't. Yeah, y'all better study Haitian culture. Yeah, that's just not. We're not known for our tact. We're not known for our submission. We're just do a little history. It's just I know that that handles more problems than being the alpha man. The
Yeah.
being the quiet, reserved, selfless servant. And honestly, that's the better long game. Because if you're a parent, you understand that your kids are not going to listen to you sometimes.
Right.
But your repetition, your demeanor, and how you present yourself consistently, when they're older, they look back and they thank you for it. And that's the game plan that you kind of got to stick to as far as being that man and
Nice.
being that man, right? So that's how I approach it. So the there was a second part to that. I went so far into the deep part, I forgot the second part.
Honestly, no, I think you covered it, brother.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
you wrapped it all up while you were doing your explaining. It was like you kind of like checked all the boxes. So,
Okay. Okay.
but I love that about a Christian man, like that is going to be perceived as being weak. I absolutely love that because it's true, and yeah, it's something that we have to start taking pride in instead of worrying about, so to speak. But I
That's
love
that's how
that.
summarization looks like,
Yeah.
everybody. That's the master class right there. I love it.
That's
Yes.
how we put it together, man, so we can wrap
Right.
up. Listen, as we wrap things up, how can people reach out to you, Felice, and contact you, want to talk to you more, things like that? Where can they reach you?
Meredith1.com. That kind of links out to everything. We have a blog that reaches, depending on how Google feels about me that month, anywhere between 20 and 40,000 visitors a month. And we just created relationship advice, anywhere from dating to marriage. It just took a combination of things we're asked all the time and just put it in a blog format. And so that's the place where you can get relationship advice. But you can get that from Married as One, exactly how it sounds. No number is spelled out.com. And you can also reach us on Married is One on Instagram. A lot of people reach us through Instagram inbox, but Married is One. That's where I do the videos for the people that don't want to read. I do the videos right there, and that's where you can kind of see the vision and what we're trying to do and everything. But those two
Perfect.
places will take you everywhere.
Perfect, brother. All right, I love it. You and I are going to be having more conversations
Look forward to it. Look
for
forward to
sure.
it.
So yeah, and I'll definitely, if you're open to it, I'd love to have you back on here to talk about some more men's issues because we just scratched the surface today.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll do
Anytime.
that too. All right, brother. Um, well, folks, as we wrap this up, this has been counselor, chaplain, consultant, Felice Matthews. Matthew, Felice, thank you for being on today, and for bringing everything you did. I love your perspective, and like I said, we're going to talk again, man. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. I look forward to it.
Good deal. Folks, the reason that we have such powerful men like this on this program with such powerful messages is because this is the Power of Man podcast. And we are united in trying to help you regain your power so that you can become a better provider, a better protector, a better leader tomorrow than you are today, but also so you can become a better husband, a better father, a better man tomorrow than you are today. And the reason that we want that for you is because you have value, you matter, and you're worth it. And then at some point, at some point, you just have to believe it. Until next time.